Well, this is Jim Mitchell, and this is another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast. Let's get right into it. First, we have study finds that opposition to privatization, lower taxes, and shrinking the welfare state is correlated with weaker cognitive abilities from Ruin My Circle Jerk, and that's a study from onlinelibrary.wiley.com. And yeah, I think science can be used to really prove anything. I personally would say that as we usually say, that studies can be used to push anything. I think this is more to push a narrative study than anything else. So that's my thoughts there. But you can make the argument. Then we have the liberal rehabilitation of Bush/Cheney since 2016 is absolutely wild. When I first started writing about politics in 2005, Dems routinely called Bush and Cheney fascists, Nazis, racists, and literal Hitlers. Now almost everyone who worked for them are DC liberal heroes. From Glenn Greenwald on Twitter, and I posted that, and I said, just goes to show people will follow whatever the narrative is. I remember when they were the worst thing ever. Now it's Trump. The next worst thing ever will be whoever has the GOP nomination for president/VP next. I remember when when Bush left office. I remember we were chanting Bush is gone with a friend. Well, watching Obama's inauguration in middle school, I was happy to be rid of him. But Obama had an agenda to sell me as well, and so did Trump. And they all have an agenda to sell you, and that's important to remember. Even though I would say that social media makes it seem like now is the worst time ever, I would argue that the 2000s and the Iraq War era was probably worse, but we just don't remember it because of we didn't have social media hype back then. Then we have we're not going to compromise. Actors unions say strike could last until 2024. Workers of the world unite against the authoritarian tyrant capitalists from Chi-Town 20 from smh.com.au. And I said, I personally hope the strike goes on forever, continues forever. The world has frankly advanced past the need for Hollywood, with pretty much everyone having a camera in their pocket to film whatever they want to. And I would agree that is how I feel. Because, a lot of Hollywood's just kind of pushing propaganda on you for their movies and TV shows like Late TV is Hollywood, and that's all pushing propaganda on you. And, yeah, like Colbert and Fallon and Kimmel, they're all kind of propagandists. And I think it's important to remember how, we now people can make their own movies if they want to, since pretty much everyone has a phone, has a camera in their pocket. And foreign cinema is something that's on the rise as well, stuff like Squid Game and Parasite. So we'll see how that plays out. I personally do think we'll see the decentralization of the film industry as the years go on. Then we have the Ayn Rand School for Pre-K Children from YouTube. It's a Simpsons clip from Things I Can't Find Otherwise. I think the channel is. And yeah, I personally was never really that big a fan of Ayn Rand, but I do like the thing of this is by Page Forever, by the way, they were the one who posted it. I do think the thing about Ayn Rand is that I do like how she kind of was like, you have to, take the bull by the horns, and I think that's something that I try and live by. You gotta have agency and take the bull by the horns, and that's something that I think is important. Yeah. %68% of Israel startups taking legal and financial steps due to illiberal fascist judicial overhaul, like withdrawing cash reserves, changing HQ location outside Israel, relocation of employees, and conducting layoffs from Calistech.com. And that's from Chi-Town 20. And I don't really care too much for Israel, I'll agree. But, I think, the thing is that all the countries are corrupt and try and get all the get authoritarian stuff by you, and yeah. Yeah, especially since, in Israel, 20 states, according to the Cybercom by Clorox, 20 states have made it illegal for the government to do business with companies that do any boycotting of any part of Israel. So that's important to remember as well. Israel definitely has an agenda. I used to be more anti-Israel when I was a Democrat, but now I'm more, both sides are bad. Israel and Palestine. I think every country has authoritarian tyrants, and that's just the sad truth of the world we live in. Officials arrest and charge retired pastor in 1975 cold case murder of Delco 8-year-old. There is an epidemic of pedophile rapists in the Christian community. It's been a long time occurring from NBCPhiladelphia.com by Chi-Town 20. I think that's in my area. Yeah, it's not good, but it's definitely being used to push more of a narrative case that, I'm sure if this was a transgender person, Chi-Town wouldn't care. They just sweep it under the rug. But since it's a pastor, it's the biggest thing ever. The Pentagon doesn't need $886 billion. I oppose this bloated defense budget from Bernie Sanders from TheGuardian.com. That's from Chi-Town 20. And, yeah, I would agree with Bernie there, but the thing is, that they're just going to keep spending money on it anyway, despite what Bernie says, and that's just how it's going to go. Soon will be a $5 trillion, $10 trillion, $20 trillion infinity dollar military budget, and that's just, the Pentagon gets what it wants. That's the thing. The Pentagon, the military-industrial complex, always gets what it wants, and that's the sad truth of the U.S. government. They're the ones who are some of the biggest ones when it comes to running the show. U.S. says Cambodia's elections were neither free nor fair because the political opposition was threatened and harassed prior to the election. Interestingly, the 2020 BLM riots and the political prosecution of Republicans ahead of 2024 from Molly Hemingway on Twitter. I posted that and I said, whether an election is free and fair depends on what the narrative is. I would argue that the concept itself is an absurdity. I think all elections come down to whoever has the most resources, which is inherently unfair. As for free, I would say that system where the person who wins the election goes to force their views on others or is not something that I would call free. So that's my thoughts there. That's the thing. I don't think the elections can be free and fair. I think that's I think elections are inherently authoritarian and unfair. So I would disagree with the whole concept. Then we have, does anyone at NPR read or listen to NPR from Stephen L. Miller on Twitter? And I posted that, and that is how the NPR posted the right-wing conspiracy theory about eating bugs is about as racist as you think, but they have also posted all over the years at Bug Eating Festival, kids crunch down the food of the future. Maybe it's time to swap burgers for bugs, says UN. Your ancestors probably ate insects, so it's bugging you. And they've done tons of other ones too. He provides 10 other examples. And I said, anything to uphold the narrative, it's professional gaslighting. That's what it is. It's professional gaslighting, and that's kind of, well, that's why I would consider the media to be, and social media in particular, they're both professional gaslighting, and if you dissent, the people will bully you over it and tell you nothing, and just bully you and just say, oh no, you're crazy. Well, in the reality, they're pushing all their crazy stuff, but they're not. They know it's just as crazy, but they are the ones who have the ability to control the narrative, and that's not something that I think is too good, on my personal opinion. Then we have putting numbers on the rise in children seeking gender care from Reuters.com. I posted that, and I like how you can't question this without people coming after you for it. As Michael Malice said, we were already on step 4. That's like it's a step where the people who are freaking out are the real problem. People say stuff like the science changed, but in reality, it's the narrative that changed. I think it's important to ask questions, as Bill Moore said in the segment I really like of his first show. Big Pharma has a vested interest in selling stuff like this, and that's important to remember. And I think, you have to remember that kids are extremely easily influenced. If you watch the Link from Mar, he said he wanted to be a pirate when he was a kid, but that doesn't mean he was scheduled for eye patch and peg leg surgery. I think it's interesting that LGBTQ discourse used to be focused on how people are born this way, the way they are, but now it's you are born wrong if you are so much as look at the wrong thing. And I think that's important to remember. I think if children want to present as the opposite sex, they should be able to do so. I'm just skeptical of letting them consent to non-life-saving surgeries and hormones that we don't know the long-term effects of. When they are adults, I would be fine with it. The thing is, you just can't question it. And that's I think the big thing. I think you can make a libertarian argument for both sides. You can make a libertarian argument that parents know what's best for their kids, and they should be able to let them provide any services within reason, like not justifying like stuff like having sex with kids, but maybe some other stuff like this. But you also have the children can consent arguments, which I would use here, because I don't know if they could consent to this, especially when it's for non-life-saving surgery like this. I don't have problems with people doing any drugs they want to, but I do have a problem with coercion children to using drugs that might have a long-term negative side effects. Keep in mind this is happening at a scale not seen before, and you can't question it without being shut down and gaslighted. I think that's important to really know. You should always be able to question stuff. And all sources can be biased. Just because the source says it has some kind of authority doesn't mean that authority has to be accepted. You can increasingly see cases for these transgenders pop up, like the one I linked a while ago. I won't be surprised if those become increasingly frequent as time went on. You might not believe this, but not transing children is probably the more popular argument on social media, but you are and the rest of the people on the subreddit live on Reddit and Twitter land. Reddit and Twitter land, everyone wants to trans all the kids. It's Dave Chappelle says it's not a real place, but it's increasingly affecting the real world. So that's why I think we gotta pull it off the social media. You gotta stop them from their echo chambers. So I think that's why it's important to stand your ground on stuff like this. I personally don't think you should do it, but I don't know if we should use the state. I think in the end, who controls it comes down to who has the force to stop it and who has the ability to do it. The left right now controls the narrative on when it comes to transing the kids. So I think they'll probably hopefully they'll backtrack soon. But if they don't, they'll probably go on something else like, oh, the kids can consent to sex. So we'll see how that goes. Then we have Rip Richard Russell from Level Ad 3231, and that's a Get Lost YouTube video from their channel. Gaslayers Anonymous, and that's Richard Russell. He was the guy I think who hijacked the plane in 2018, and then. Was it a hijack? Yeah, I think it was the hijacked plane, and then he died. So it's just a video of a plane. Just he did a song about it. I don't know. Yeah, I think that looks interesting. Then we have Truth from Donald Key, and that's a Justin Amash tweet. Imagine you and your spouse, or it could be for I don't know. Imagine you and your spouse are hugely in debt from overspending. So you call a meeting and agree each of you will spend more. That's Congress. I'd agree. That's a pretty good summary there from the Ramash right there. Vaccine politics may be to blame for GOP excess death, study finds. Pure noir comedy from WashingtonPost.com by Chi-Town20. And I guess you could make the argument, but if people want to take risk and it results in their deaths, that's their own decision, as long as they're not hurting anyone else. I guess you could argue that they could spread the virus to everyone else, but you can spread any virus to anyone else. That's just how life is. Then we have Texas A&M suspended professor accused of criticizing Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick in lecture from TexasTribune.org. And I would agree that's a bit too far. I think, we shouldn't be firing people for saying stuff that could be offensive. I know this is more that, it could offend the right, but the left, I would think, is usually the worst one, I would say. And this is by from the L563. I don't know if I said that, but yeah, the left usually a lot more. You can't say, I don't believe in anything to do with the LGBTQ or social justice doctrine, and they'd cancel you for that. So I think it's bad on both sides. So that's why I think this is bad. But I do think it's bad on the left too. So that's why I think we need to be normalizing people having free speech, and I think freedom of association is important as well. But I think we need to have more normal free speech as well, as that's something more I would ultimately be more committed to if I had to choose between two of them. Then we have Government Central Planning Fails, Free People Create Order on Our Own from John Stossel on YouTube, and I posted that. And I think, I would agree there. The people will make their own order. They don't need a government to push them around. They don't need anyone to push them around. People will have order on their own, and I think that's important to remember. People don't need a centralized power structure. They will find a way to make order on their own. That's my thoughts there. That was so funny how they found cocaine in the White House, probably the most surveyed building on the planet. And after a week, they were like, "Yeah, we looked, and we unfortunately can't find who left it." And he said, "Oh, okay, too bad. Thanks for looking." From Glenn Greenwald on Twitter, I posted that, and I said, "Really goes to show people accept anything if it's narrative enough. I'm sure it would have been different if Trump still lived there." They would say, "Oh, this building is most surveyed on the planet. How can Trump not find the cocaine? Whoever put the cocaine there? I bet you it was Don Jr. or Eric." But the thing is, they should be able to have cameras everywhere, but it just goes to show you they don't really care about the war on drugs other than to oppress the poor and the other and the rest of the proletariat. So that's just to show you they don't care when the rich people do it or when they do it in the White House. As long as if it's the narrative enough. Immigration Act restrictions are affirmative action for natives. Ruin my circle jerk. And that's a Cato.org post. And I would kind of agree with that. I personally am very more open border kind of guy. I think we should be allowing more freedom of movement and freedom to live where you want. And that's why I think the immigration process should be easy as possible. So I guess you have the argument, you have the libertarian argument, it should be an opposite libertarian as well, but the whole current welfare state, I would say though, but I personally am more on the open border side. Mistrial clear after man waits 10 years in jail for a day in court. I said, always look on the bright side of life from Monty Python. That's kind of what plays right there what happens when stuff like this happens, I would say. I also said, NDIT guy said they need prosecutors in jail for 10 years at least. I said they won't. This is a feature, not a bug. The thing is, the system is inherently broken, and we just need to get. I think we just need to get rid of this whole system and just let people figure out justice on their own. We don't need courts coming up from on high and saying, "Oh, we make the laws." No, that's elitist. We need the people making the justice, not the elites. Now, I was from Atlanta News First, and Ninja Lore posted if I didn't say that already. We should make a bingo card of this by Tom13, right from IOWP.com. That's Tom and the Dancing Bug. What we meant in climate change deniers would say when climate catastrophes came. It's I was so wrong, but no, they're actually just justifying it. It's kind of a narrative post. And yeah, I don't really care too much, climate change I think is mostly just media hype. That's my thoughts there. Court strikes down Arizona's law banning filming of police from boingboing.net by Tom13. I would agree that's definitely an overstretch. I think you should be able to film anywhere, anytime, for any reason, as long as, I guess you could say if the person consents to it, but I guess, the cops, they are public servants, so they automatically consent to be filmed if they're working in that role, I would say. If you're a public servant. That's why I think you should just be able to film. Yeah. Especially if they're working in that role, yeah. So then we have why America stopped building public schools from Paton 13. The answers are unsurprising from CNN.com. And yeah, I would agree that, we don't really have public spaces anymore, and that's just kind of the way things are. We don't have the money for it, and that's just kind of we just spend all our money on other stuff instead. We don't have infinite money, and that's just the harsh reality of life. Then we have a wealth tax. Doesn't make sense from Common Sense Soapbox. And I personally don't think we should have a wealth tax. I don't like any taxes, but I think wealth taxes, because wealth can be subjective. What the government ultimately can justify taking whatever it wants, and the wealth tax is by a means in which they could do that. I posted that. And then we have Idaho judge sentenced 5 from white nationalist group into jail for conspiracy riot at Pride event. And Tom 13 said, "Look, Jimmy, the feds went to jail. Now it's coming to a bit." I said, "Totally. You can't say they aren't doing their jobs." Also, like Wayne Ferrante said, I guess rioting is usually bad. Who knew? I said, what did I say? It depends on who's writing and why. I compared the story to this one. Now, I linked the story of how, from Reuters, New York paid $13 million to protesters arrested during George Floyd protests. It's not okay to riot unless you're rioting for the the approved cause, or what the narrative is, why January 6th was the worst thing ever, but the George Floyd riots were fine, and vice versa, for depending on who you asked. So I think we're gonna wrap it up there, and see you guys in the next episode. Bye.